Hello, all you hardcores out there. How are you doing? Got a treat for you today. We've got Julian here from Dewsbury. How are you doing, Julian?
I'm all good, mate. I'm all good. I'm ready for the weekend.
Yeah, I know, brilliant. Uh, Conor Ben Eubank, it's done. The rehydration clause, that catch weight, whatever it all is, they're getting 5 million. What's your take on it?
Oh, well, first of all, you and I talked about this a couple of weeks, and I said I can't see that fight going ahead. And I'd like to say that was wrong, and I'd like to apologise, but it's a little bit like, not in terms of the weight and the structure, but if I think back to Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather, I remember when I heard the rumours about that fight, and I just said, that'll never happen. That's just nonsense, you see. Why would you continually try and destroy the sport of boxing? And why would boxing's biggest pound-for-pound star have his 50-0 against someone who's effectively an MMA fighter? And I never believed it had happened. And I think that part of that was because I was naive, and I still like to think, even though boxing's business, there's still a small part of it that's a sport, and there's honour among boxers and boxing people. So I thought very similar of the Ben and Eubank, because I've no issue with Conor Ben if he doesn't want to campaign at welterweight or wants to step up to middleweight for a one-off. No issue with that whatsoever. You want to step up to middleweight and fight a middleweight, you fight a middleweight. So when I started hearing about catch weights and things like that, I just started thinking, this won't happen. There's no way this fight's going to happen because it's dangerous. We know how big Eubank is. He was a 168 and he was solid at that weight. He looks absolutely in great shape, but right on the weight at 160. And I thought, this fight's not going to happen. And once again, it taps into that almost naivety. You and I love boxing, clinging on to boxing, thinking, do you know what? There's a small part of me that thinks the board won't allow it, the sanctioning people won't allow it, the promoters won't allow it, because we have to put the safety of boxers first. But once again, I mean, you always say this, that greed, it reaches in you, it gets hold of you, and once greed gets hold of you, they're obsessed. And there's, I mean, I talk about this forever. One of the things that no one's mentioned yet, not that I've been looking for anyone to talk about this, like some things in life and in sport are just unsaid, and people don't, like certain really successful, well-known heavyweights failing drug tests, and no one ever talks about it. So we have something similar right now. So both Nigel Benn Sr. and Chris Eubank Sr., they both, unfortunately, were involved in fights where their opponents were just, their lives were changed forever because they both suffered horrific injuries. Now, the irony is not lost in me. Now, both Gerald McClellan and Michael Watson struggled massively at the weight. They were known for that. Now, the board can preach and say, well, they used to have on the day weigh-ins, and now we have spot checks and 4 weeks out. You can give me as much shit as you want. But ultimately, the irony that possibly the two people behind this fight, or the two people who could stop this fight, are fighters who, obviously, you never do that intentionally, but have injured other opponents who have come down massively in weight. And they've come down massively in weight. We know what happens. The last fluid to rehydrate and replenish is a fluid around the brain and the spinal cord. And I can't believe that anywhere else I'd be like, it's a catch weight, it's dangerous. But I think the irony has been completely missed, that two of the people behind this fight are people who have been involved in fighters suffering horrific injuries due to rapid weight loss. And I'll be honest, I'm absolutely disgusted this fight's going to happen. And you know what? I think, God willing, nothing happens to Chris Eubank Jr. If there are any injuries in that fight, people are going to have blood on their hands, and I truly believe that.
And it won't be the first time, would it?
It wouldn't be the first time at all. I mean, you are talking about a guy. I mean, we've got so many aspects of this. We know the fight's at 157. So Eubank has got to 159.5, and he's done that, and he's been tight. He doesn't carry massive weight in the ring, we know that. But ultimately, he's going to be coming at 157. He then has a rehydration clause, which nobody's absolutely sure what it is, but there's rumours of a £5, £6, £7. But
£5.
ultimately, the morning after. So you've got a guy who, as soon as he's weighed in, if he's going to be ready to drop on those scales, but there's also the part of that what people are not missing. And I've been with fighters who have been tight at the weight over the years, whether it's due to diet or whether it's due to out of the ring indiscretions. Now, what's going to happen? And I don't care what Eubank tells you or his trainers tell you a couple of weeks before the fight. About a week and a half before the fight, Chris Eubank Jr. will be existing on fumes. That guy's going to be about 163, 164 a week before the fight. He'll be already struggling. He'll be massively struggling getting down to the weight. And the only way he's going to be able to make the last few days is to effectively reduce and effectively go nil by mouth. Certainly 2 or 3 days before that weigh-in. I wouldn't be surprised by the Wednesday if he goes dry. And what happens, we all know what happens about the spine. We know what happens about the brain. Your organs shrink. When you become rehydrated, your organs shrink. And these things don't replenish in a 24 hours or 48 hours. These, look at yourself. You've not been well, Russell.
21 pound I've put on in 7 full days, doing 5
Absolutely.
and 6 days.
Yeah, so you've not been well. You know what it's like to be, down at the weight. You've got nothing about you. You're listless, but you're not fighting a big punching welterweight.
Oh, your body don't work inside your intestines and peeing and going to the toilet. It says, it's a disaster, isn't it? Imagine getting it as well there.
So he's going to cook food and then they're going to have to rehydrate him, but they're not going to rehydrate him by 8, 9, 10 pounds overnight. They're going to have to rehydrate him just by 5 pounds. So then in the morning, eventually your body just doesn't react to, it thinks you're starving it, and it's so dangerous what they're doing. I can't explain how dangerous it is what they're doing, because the one thing his body's going to be crying out for is minerals and fluids and vitamins. It's not going to get that if he can only do the 5 pounds. It's going to get
after 4 days, your digestive system shuts down. That surgeon told me. He said, if you starve, he said, before, like people who go on hunger strike in jail. I'm always amazed. How did you get to 9 days? He said, well, after 4 days, I didn't want anything to eat. Do you know what I mean?
Well, absolutely. So what fighters do is the last week or so, the fighters who are tight at the weight, so they cut the carbs because your camp's almost done. A week and a half out, the heavy lifting's done, and then it's a little bit of light aerobic workout, a bit of speed work drills. But you cut the carbs, you still have a little bit of protein because your body just gets rid of protein and the minerals, etc. And you get the fluids. He's going to be having to reduce all of that just to make 157. People will say, what's £3? £3 when you've already lost as much as you can lose is like a regular person.
That's only part one of it, though, isn't it? That bit. He's got the stuff.
Yep. So we've got to get him on the scales fit and healthy, or at least managing to walk on the scales. And I'm sure you'll see him with a little drink, having a sip for the camera, saying, look, I've made the weight fine, don't worry about me. And then he can't, he's got the £5 to do overnight. And then in the morning, these guys are going to be surrounded by experts and nutrition and dietitians, of course. But in the morning, then he's got 12 hours to try and put into what his body really, really needs. And the thing is, there's only certain things you can eat. You don't want to slow your performance down. And it's going to be difficult as far as I'm concerned. And I just think, why? And people say, Jules, you've covered it already, because it's all about money. But is it just about money? Is this where we're at now? Is nothing else matters in sport apart from money?
Well, looking at it from outside, it looks like they're trying to make him come down and him step up to sleep. Don't forget, one were a super middle, others like a small welter, and it's like that, isn't it? So they've got them together. It's got Eddie written all over it, but I think what's in bad taste is how they're trying to sell it, and then when the second weigh-in the next morning at 11 o'clock, that's when everybody will be there like vultures looking at the scales. You know yourself, you've been there, they're like vultures. And if he's so much as a few pound over, you'll have one fighter going, oh, God, I've got to pay that fine. And Eddie and other team will be like, lovely jubbly, money. And look at this man here risking his life and draining him down and taking every bit of power and whatever out him and fluids.
It's madness, and that's the thing. You see, if you want to move up to middleweight, people are getting this the wrong way around. You know, you've heard people commenting saying Ben's going to get hurt because Ben's moving up 2 weight divisions. You know, we've talked about this before. Fighters through history have always moved up. Yeah, that's up to them. You know, not obviously giving weight is a disadvantage if you're giving true weight. But what Eubank's doing is actually the reverse of that. He's boiling down to a weight. He said he hasn't been that weight since he was, what, 17 years old, 18 years old? I mean,
Did you in private schools, something like that? He was a boarding school, wasn't he?
Yeah, we all know when you get older, you know, it gets harder to make the weight, not just because of various reasons, but your metabolism slows down, your bones get denser, your body changes, you know, the physicality of your body changes. And it's just him making 160 is hard as it is, but to make 157, it's so dangerous. I mean, I'm sure Conor Ben's going to be going to the body all night. It's just going to be like an empty shell. And I'm going to contradict myself, you know, I've said this before, if Eubank Jr. is 70-80% strong at the weight, I make him a really strong favourite. But I just think back to, you know, other fighters who you just know have looked ill on the scales, and there's only so far you can go in a fight before you just empty your tanks, your reservoirs just empty completely. So I think it's a dangerous fight, a really dangerous fight, and I'd like to know what the Border Control are doing about this, because ultimately they're the regulators of boxing.
Well, they let Tony Bellew fight Stevenson, didn't they?
I mean, we all saw Tony Bellew against Stevenson. I mean, the guy looked ill, didn't he?
Tony shouldn't have taken that fight.
You know, I've seen Bellew in the flesh sparring against Mark Hobson. He's a unit, is Bellew, and he's he was a heavyweight in the amateurs, etc. And he never looked right at, at 12 stone 7 anyway. And against Stevenson over there, it was just, I mean, Stevenson was a good kid, but it was a shell, wasn't he? It was an absolute shell. I mean, you have Crawford Ashley on your show, and I've met Crawford a few times, and Crawford was a good fighter. And I've said this before, the boiled Crawford Ashley down. Anybody who's seen Crawford Ashley in the flesh is the biggest light heavyweight you're ever going to. He's a giant of a light heavyweight, isn't he? His shoulders are like
6'4", isn't he?
6'4". His shoulders are like coat hangers. He's solid. And Michael Nunn and those guys boiled him down to 12 stone. And Michael Nunn, no surprisingly, went to the body and he just destroyed Crawford to
for
the
19
body.
grand.
For 19 grand. And what are these guys?
19 grand off Don King, a pound for pound superstar Nunn at the time.
Nunn was absolutely brilliant. It was one of my favourite.
They ripped Crawford off, Leah. Not with the decision, obviously. Crawford's admitted it. Nunn he was somebody who just couldn't fathom out. But they ripped him off on Virgil. They ripped him off with Perce Nunn fight, and they ripped him off with Virgil Hunter decision, because he clearly won that fight, didn't he? The Virgil Hill.
Yeah, I remember Virgil. He was the silver medalist, wasn't he, in the Olympics? And it's a dirty sport, isn't it? It's a dirty, horrible sport. But I mean, I've not seen too much of Conor Benn. I just see the clickbait, and I tend not to watch it. But I've seen Conor Benn saying in the clickbait, Eubank's making excuses already. Well, I'll tell you what, Conor. You get down to 140 and fight Josh Taylor or fight Jack Carter. I'll see how you perform down at the next weight. You get down to 135, get down to lightweight. Let's see how you feel dragging your body right down. It's not an excuse, it's a reason. He's taken the fight, but you wonder who are these voices and who are these influencers convincing these guys to take these.
Maybe it's nobody. Maybe Conor Benn and Chris Eubank are money driven, because the dads are not as rich as they were. They don't fight no more, do they? Their days are over. Now it's the lads' turn. Fair enough. You say they're both explosive fighters, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But are they worthy of a pay? Would it be a pay-per-view if they weren't a Benn or a Eubank?
Absolutely not. That's the only reason people are paying to see this fight. Well, they wouldn't even be fighting because of the 3 weight divisions or 2.5 weight divisions between them. We wouldn't have a fight, would we? It's just, everybody knows it's because they're more talented fathers and more famous fathers. It sparks something. And I think Terry said this in something that he did with him recently. He said it sparked something in that 30-something, 40-something guys who, I mean, I was at the first Ben and Eubank fight at the NEC, and it does, and it stirs something inside you because it's part of your childhood, isn't it? And they say, as part of your childhood dies, part of you does too. But so it brings it back. We all like to live our youths again. I bet you're the same, aren't you, when you go into a bike shop and you see an old BMX or something, and you're like, I used to have one of those, and
Rally Super Burner.
Absolutely. So imagine, it's like, yeah, I had all kinds
Pro
of
with gold wrap on it.
Oh, Skyways and all that kind of stuff. I absolutely loved it, mate. And so Ben and Eubank's the same. It's that nostalgic trip for us. And also, it's like my kids are into similar type of music as me. Your kids are like yourself. So when the dads are talking about Ben and Eubank and this second generation of casual boxing fans are hearing about Ben and Eubank, they start to follow Junior and Junior. And then everybody gets giddy about this fight. But if they were called Smith and Jones, we wouldn't be having a fight, would we?
No, we won't. Unless it were Smiths. They've done
well. Smith
they
brothers.
did well when they were Joe Gallagher, didn't they? All of them.
That's a talented family.
Done well, aren't
they? Yeah, absolutely done well.
Did really, really well. They did well. Joe did well for them, but they were in the ring, weren't they? Teamwork.
Yeah, they got to take shots.
If somebody gets hurt, right? It's going to be one or two of them, isn't it? It's going to be Eubank because of the weight situation, isn't it? He's going to blame that if he's knocked out or if he's hurt. And the other kid, even though he's game and getting in with him, really all cards are stacked in his favour, aren't they? When you look at it,
I think so.
He's been very vulnerable here, Chris Eubank, taking this, and I can understand why his dad's saying he's concerned about it, unless they're trying to sell the fight. I don't know, because nobody speaks truth anymore, do they? What we're supposed to think.
Everybody talks in riddles, don't they? And everybody talks cryptic because we all know the truth. And you get all these pundits and that waxing lyrical about it. And then you get anybody who speaks the truth, like Peter Fury, Joe Gallagher, they get crushed, and you see the comments and people say, oh, you're only jealous because you're not involved. And people just rip you to bits. But the absolute truth of the matter is I find the fight vulgar. Eubank and Ben in their own right, the good fighters, no one's knocking them. Ben's definitely improved massively since his early days. And I think if we're all honest, when he had those early 4 rounders, do we think it'd have even been anywhere approaching what he's doing right now? No, I wouldn't have thought it could be anything. I thought it was a novelty. So brilliant performance there just to get where he's at. Eubank Jr., he hasn't quite got his dad's versatility, but he's certainly got his chin and his balls. So I'm not knocking the guys. These are dedicated, brave fighters, but they're definitely, as you've said, they're definitely money chasers. They're massively superficial because every time Conor Benn opens his mouth, he's talking about Ferraris and heated seats and Rolex watches, etc. So they're completely, like a lot of people in today's society, they're completely superficial and driven by the pound note. And am I knocking them for that? I'm saying, look, you guys do what you do. It's got nothing to do with me. But ultimately, what happens is when people leave a bad smell in boxing, we all suffer, don't we? It lingers on, and it's the boxing fans and people who care about the sport.
Well, they disappear, don't they? If Conor Benn gets knocked about, right, by Eubank, which is quite possible, he'll probably not fight for a year, then he'll come back and I'm moving up to light middle.
Yeah.
He'll probably do something like that if he gets knocked about. And then they come back, don't they, then? But they're never the same, are they?
No, never the same again. I mean,
if he gets flogged by Eubank, is he a pay-per-view star when he comes back?
I mean, that's the thing. He's even a contender because even though he'll be fighting at welterweight and his rankings aren't at risk, suddenly just becomes fair game, doesn't it? And the confidence thing. I'm not obsessed in people's unbeaten record like some people, but someone said this about Joshua and Usyk. I know we'll come on to that later, saying, no, it's not all about unbeaten records. But it's not. But what happens if you do get flogged, to your point, sometimes you can see it's a pathway to beat somebody. But it's not just getting beaten, but it's getting beaten badly. Although having said that, Nigel Benn was absolutely flogged by Michael Watson. Ben came back, but Ben came back. He came back the humble way, though, didn't he?
He went to America out that way.
Yeah.
And to be fair, he fought proper people, didn't he? Fought that Amparo, he fought Sanderline Williams.
Sanderline Williams was
He
good.
were
good
James
perennial
Tony's
fighter.
hardest fight. James Tony said in Ring Magazine. Doug DeWitt, he done him.
Doug DeWitt.
Barkley.
Yeah, so he came back, didn't he?
Hey,
And
listen,
beat some
he
good
came
dudes.
back better than ever.
But
Came back with big wins, didn't he?
I guess as well though, Russell, there's the thing that it's the hunger, because Nigel Benn at that point when he fought Michael Watson would have earned anywhere near this kind of money. So Ben still had it to do to earn any to become a rich man. Whereas Conor Benn, you know, what if Conor Benn does get spanked, or if Eubank gets spanked, they're both sat on another 5 million. There's no rush to come back, is there? And where's the hunger then? You know, where's the hunger?
There's no hunger.
No,
no hunger. Do you want to click on next link, mate, please?
Of course, mate.
Cheers.
Give me 2 seconds.
Please join us in part 2, and don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment.